Good morning. I'm Aida Mirniazmandan. I'm presenting my dissertation entitled Proposal of a Company BIM Guide in Alignment with ISO 19650 as the final project of BIM A+ program. And this dissertation is a sequence of dissertations of Julia that just presented and Bianca from the last year BIM A+ program. We are aware of the numerous benefits of BIM. However, there are still barriers to BIM adoption and implementation. Based on the literature, lack of a standard, absence of guidance, and unfamiliarity with BIM are among those barriers. To overcome the obstacle, BIM guidance documents have been published by government authorities, industry associations, and academic institutions. BIMS, which is an international consulting company, aims to achieve a BIM guide to facilitate BIM implementation in the company. And the objective of this work is to achieve a guide for BIM's company, which is in compliance with ISO 19650 that defines information management principles. And the BIM guide contains a defined set of procedures and guidelines for the practice of BIM in the organization and assists the individuals in the company to better understand BIM fundamentals and it ensures all of the involved parties will produce, release, and receive data in a consistent format. And it promotes coordination and results in efficient and effective workflow. It's a living document that evolves over time. The dissertation work started with the study of the existing BIM guide. Then a primary structure for the BIM guide proposal was presented, and the experts' opinion were received, conducting a meeting with the BIM's company and the questionnaire. Next step was the development of the final structure and the content, considering the feedback received, and the final step was the validation step by meeting with the BIMs again. The dissertation is presented in 8 chapters. That chapter 4 to 7 are BIM guide proposal. At the initial stage of the research, more than 100 BIM guidance documents were reviewed, chosen from Building Smart BIM Guide project database and other resources. And finally, 19 of them were selected for detailed review based on 3 criteria: publishing date, document type to be both descriptive and instructive, and the coverage, documents that cover more than 5 topics. And here you can see the timeline for the guide selected. The next step is selecting topics for the guide. In general, the review documents cover a broad spectrum of topics. However, there are several similarities among them. So after careful review of the documents, 17 topics were selected for detailed review. The criteria for selecting these topics were their significance to the company BIM application and the consistent presence of the topics in most of the analyzed documents. Also, the inclusion of all range of subjects from strategic to more technical was another criterion that was considered. And this table presents the comparison metrics for 19 BIM guides and 17 topics. It is to demonstrate how often the topics are included in the guides and in what degree of detail or comprehensiveness they appeared. The topics are analyzed and scored in 3 levels mentioned, with the score of 1, detailed with the score of 3, and highly detailed with the score of 5. For example, here you can see in BIM guidelines of University of Southern California, BEP is covered in this guide in a detailed way, so its score is 3. And here is the result of analyzing the metrics. And this table shows the document topics, their frequency, and the degree of comprehensiveness in the documents. And the degree of comprehensiveness is calculated by adding the respective scores of 1, 3, and 5. And regarding the 19 selected guides, the maximum value for each topic can be 95 if the topic is covered in highly detailed degree in all of the 19 guides. And 11 out of the 17 topics appear in more than half of the guides, and it emphasizes the importance of these topics. But some of them, like BIM object and software template, only exist in less than 5 documents. Then, to organize and classify the topics in the BIM guide proposal, a specialized taxonomy is introduced that include 4 main knowledge clusters of policy, people, process, and technology. The proposal for the BIM's BIM guide is supposed to be thorough and cover all the areas of BIM practice in the company. So it is decided to cover all the 17 topics and to contain strategic, managerial, and technical guidelines, and then ask the opinion of the BIM's company if the topics are required to be in the guide or not. And to place each of these 17 topics into the 4 clusters that I explained, 2 methods were implemented. First one is a system of concrete questions as criteria in a way that each topic fits to the pertinent category by positive answer to at least one of its questions. The second method is assigning each topic to the subcategories of each cluster. For example, policy cluster has subcategories of contractual, regulatory, and proprietary. These subcategories are extracted from the series of papers, especially the papers by Sakar and Qasem. For example, BEP is colored under contractual and policy here. At the end, these 2 methods help placing the topics into the 4 categories and 8 subcategories. There were 3 validation steps. The first one was meeting with the BIM's technical board and receiving feedback. The second one was an online questionnaire. And the final one was a meeting with the BIM's technical board again, and they unanimously expressed their approval and satisfaction with the result of the work. And here you can see the online questionnaire. The online questionnaire was used to receive the opinions of the BIM's company collaborators about the content of the BIM guide proposal, and about half of them participated in this survey. Here you can see the first page of the questionnaire, one of the question and its respective analysis. For this question, 90% of the respondents answered by absolutely yes and yes. And also they made some comments for the improvement. The comments were analyzed, and those that were applied on the BIM guide are colored green, and those that were not considered applicable to the content are shown in pink. And this analysis was done for all 8 questions. And it is the overview of all the responses to the questionnaire in percentage. Only 2% of the responses is disapproval, and 98% are different degrees of yes. And majority of the responses are yes and absolutely yes. In total, 85% of the respondents validate the content of the BIM guide in a high degree. And this is the mind map that illustrates the final classification of the topics after applying the modifications based on the results of validations, BIM's meeting, and the questionnaire. This is the overview of what BIM guide contains in each 4 categories and 8 subcategories. From this slide, the content of the BIM guide proposal begins. And just a few extracts from each chapter are shown here as examples. The first chapter of the BIM guide is policy. Policy includes regulatory and contractual. And here is an extract from the guide that shows the information that the BEP should contain. And the next chapter is people, with sub-chapters of human resources and training and support. Here is the roles and responsibility table for the 3 main roles that are defined in most of the analyzed guide. Here is a part of competency metrics, and here is the RACI metrics for the roles and deliverables. The third chapter is process, that contains product and services and communication subchapters. In product and services, BIM uses, LOX, and quality control subtopics are discussed. In communication, information exchange and collaboration, CDE, clash detection, and COBE are presented. And this is the table for BIM uses. The BIM uses provided here are the culmination of the uses existed in the resources plus the uses suggested by the questionnaire respondent. And this table provides the deliverable expected at each submission classified by the RIBA plan of work. And here different types of quality checks, clash detection workflow, recommendations for clash detection. And the final chapter is technology. One of its subchapters is technical protocols. In this subchapter, folder structure, naming convention, presentation style are discussed. Another subchapter is software with the that contains software and the file format and BIM object. Again, some extracts from this section: IFC, family creation workflow parameters, level of detail. And the final subchapter are software template and modeling procedures. And for software template, there are some recommendations for family templates, for starting view, organized views, and project browser view template. And finally, this was the first version of BIM's BIM guide that aimed to gather dispersed information around the literature to propose a simplified BIM guide in 4 chapters of policy, people, process, and technology. This guide follows the terminology and instructions of ISO 19651 and 2 and can be applicable to any organization practicing BIM. Thank you.